Hey, what's going on? Social workers, mental health professionals, and change agents. Welcome to a special episode of the Social Work Rants podcast. I'm your host, Bas Moreno. Saludos a todos. Greetings, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, tapping in. Appreciate all the love and support. Hope everybody's doing well out there. It's been a crazy, crazy time. We're in the holiday season. Um, for many of us is stressful buying gifts. Many of us enjoy the holidays. Many of us are the holidays are the worst time of year. So uh, again, thank you everybody for your love, support, wherever you are uh, watching, listening. This episode will be on the audio platform, all the audio platforms as well on the YouTube. So this episode is recorded on Friday the 16th. So shout out to all of you. Shout out to all the YouTube subscribers, all the listeners, all the podcasts, wherever you are listening. Um, Over 60 countries have heard the podcast. Uh, Next month, January, makes 3 years of the Social Work Grants podcast. So the podcast has really grown throughout these last 2.5, almost 3 years. Giving you a lot of content, a lot of information. Um, if you have a small business, definitely tap into the entrepreneurial episodes. I've had grief and loss episodes. If you are in that space of grief and loss, we expressed a lot about that. Um, in this episode, when we talk about is it grief, is it compassion fatigue, is it burnout? Um, and a lot of what we're going to be saying is basically a combination of all three, or one and then leads right into the other, or then right leads to the other. But before we get into all that, this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Bass City Entertainment, your home for online holistic self care, featuring Zumba and poetry, featuring my poetry book that came out. One of the highlights of this year, my poetry book that came out this summer, Triumph Through Pain: How to Maximize Your Full Potential During Hard Times. 30 pages, front and back, um, talking about grief, loss, anxiety, self awareness, self esteem, financial literacy, written during the heart of the pandemic after over 10 clients. Really, by the time I left the job in 2020, moved out of New York, um, I counted 30 clients that passed away from COVID. And during the same time period, I obviously lost, if you know my story, you know that my mom passed away also from COVID. So put all that grief and all that loss and put it in a poetry book. And definitely shout out to everybody who purchased the book. There is a new link, so you can get it directly through me, and I'll ship them out. You also can get the book on Amazon. So by all means, selfishly, I would love like the numbers to go up for sales through Amazon. But if you want to get autographed copies of my book, I'll personally ship them out, sign it, personalize it to you. There will be a link using a different app that I'm able to. I figured out how to able to. You purchase it through the link, and I'm able to ship them out. So, and I'm also the contributing author of one of the best books of 2022, Latinx and Social Work, Volume Two. Is my picture is right there. Amazing book. I read it front to back. Um, Shout out to all the authors that you know share their truth, and share their knowledge, share their their self worth in the book. So definitely proud to be part of that. It was already is been an Amazon #1 bestseller 2 days after it was released in October. So Shout out to everybody who purchased the book that's continuing to buy the book, and things are starting to happen in terms of potential presentations and others dope events coming into 2023. So shout out to everybody that purchased the book. Saludos a todos, gracias por todo su apoyo. El libro está en español. The book is also in Spanish, so you know someone who predominantly reads in Spanish and would like to get a copy. I've also sold the books Latinx and Social Work in English and in Spanish, and I'll autograph them for you. So definitely tune in, tap in. I also have the podcast merch. Definitely go to www.triumphthroughpain.myshopify.com and get your podcast gear. And also, if you're bold enough, I sell FASWB t-shirts as well. So a lot going on. Try to get this entrepreneurship thing going along into 2023, and is a lot of good points. Definitely learned a lot and hope to continue to put things in practice for the new year. So let's get cracking. If you want to follow the podcast on social media, on Instagram at the Social Work Rants Podcast. That's all one word on Instagram. At Twitter at Social Work Rants. Don't let Elon Musk scare you away from going on Twitter, and don't let Mark Zuckerberg scare you away from Facebook, aka Meta. Type in the Social Work Rants Podcast on Facebook, aka Meta. Tune in, tap in, and also YouTube. Hit that red subscribe button, hit the like button, and tune in, tap in for weekly episodes. I will be dropping an episode next week. There's something happens this week which relates to social work school. I need to do more research, so I don't know if I'm going to talk about that. The original plan is to talk about highlights and this stuff for 2022, like a recap of 2022. So that you just got to follow me to find out what exactly I'm going to be talking about. But definitely and if you followed on my IG stories on Friday the 16th, you know exactly what I'm alluding to. So, but I got to do some more research on what exactly transpired, like kind of why it happened, or what have you, or maybe not. Maybe it won't be my place to talk about it if I don't have the exact info. So more than likely, it's going to be a recap episode 2022 and actually finally take a little bit of a break, maybe a couple week break for tuning for season 6. So if you want to be interviewed, come on the podcast. You got something going on in 2023, the beginning part of 2023, and want to promote it, which if it relates to social work, mental health, definitely come on the podcast. Email me at badcityentertainmentllc@gmail.com. Do a disclaimer real quick. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for mental health treatment. This podcast is for education purposes only, or entertainment purposes only. If you need assistance in terms of mental health, there's a 988 the new crisis number. You already have a therapist, reach out to your therapist. Have a psychiatrist, reach out to a psychiatrist. Call 911. For those out of the country, please contact whatever your emergency contact information is. Definitely reach out and get the help that you need if you need assistance. So again, that's the disclaimer. Shout out to my son for doing the theme song on the podcast a couple years ago. So still rocking and we going forward into 2023. So again, grief, loss, burnout, uh, or compassion fatigue. So I'm basically going to use the timeline from summer of 2019 uh, to present. Uh, so bear with me if I'm like kind of like all over the place. I did take some notes. Did write definitions. Uh, if you listen to the podcast, so consistently, you mentioned like you might have heard my struggles of working in the school system, especially this past school year, 2021 into 22. The whole school year was was rough, and I understand that many of the kids were the first time going back into school. Some kids never had that school experience from not having daycare and now starting kindergarten and got to follow rules and regulations and may not have that structure at home. I definitely noticed um, a lot of systemic stuff within the city of the school district that I worked in. Um, that it wasn't just particular to one school; it was like kind of like the whole district and just like the neighborhoods that the schools were in. So I know that has something to do with why some of these kids acted the way they did, and also the schools, the lack of appropriate discipline for the behavior that the kids were doing because they were risking harm to themselves and also risking harm to staff. Um, so that kind of like all that kind of like played out. And of course, if you don't know, my mom used to work as a paraprofessional in a school district in the Bronx for like over just over 15 years. So a lot of my grief that kind of did not experience after she passed in 2020 or didn't allow myself to grieve and just numb of her passing. The school kind of working in school kind of brought that out, and always I'm like looking at the sky like how you did this for 15 years. I'm like struggling to get through the day, um, or having issues with the supervisor, or just stuff happening that was kind of going through with the school and having thoughts of quitting every day. That's under contract. The only reason I didn't quit was because I was under contract and not trying to get into any legal trouble or paying back signing bonuses and all this other stuff. So sucked it up. I did my year. I'm done. Uh, Not looking into getting back into the school system anytime soon. So definitely the school working in the school definitely tired me out physically, tired me out emotionally. Definitely a lot of burnout. And school started. I started like late October. By the time October 2021 came in, way before Halloween, I was already like burnt out from the school and still had like 5 more months to continue in the school year. So, um, burnout describes the physical and emotional exhaustion that workers can experience when they have low job satisfaction, feel powerless, and overwhelmed at work. Uh, there were times I tried to advocate for myself and was like went in one ear and out the other, and um, even doing like the best job that I could at the time, and kind of realizing it was not good enough, and even still busting my behind because providing counseling for the kids and looking out for the kids, and still not having like, oh, you did a good job, you did this well, or like none of that praise or recognition for the work that I was doing, and um, it sucked. So I know a lot of my peers and that do school social work. They love it. They interact with. That's one thing I could recommend to MSW students or newly graduates that try different jobs. You might think you might do one thing and will love it and find out you hate it, but do as much as you can. Try different populations. I've worked with so many different populations that now I know what I like, what I don't like, what I will never do again, or what I might do again under different circumstances. And if those circumstances are not where I like it to be, I'm not doing it. So um, that was that. Um, Compassion fatigue refers to the profound emotional and physical erosion that takes place when helpers are unavailable to refuel or regenerate. Um, there were times that, going back to even dealing with my mom, like having like issues. So for those that don't know, my mom in 2019 had a fall and broke her ankle in two places and needed to go to short-term rehab. And she's had histories of falls before. Um, the time before that, she had a bad fall and cracked her head open, having to have staples in her head. And at that time, I told her, if you fall one more time, that's really going to be like the end for you. Like your body's not going to be able to handle these falls that you are doing. Um, Basically, that became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Um, 2019 fall, go to rehab, then end up having wounds, um, or her skin breaking, um, and having a wound back put in her leg and was not helping. And now I'm trying to set up, discharge planning for my mom to try to go back home. And so basically, the grief kind of even started even while she was still alive because now I'm grieving a person who's basically bedbound and not really able to walk, even though also in denial because like you gotta push yourself, you gotta push yourself, you gotta come on, you can do it. And it's like she's like, I can't. And it's like what do you mean you can't? So it was a struggle, caring for her, and I'm glad I did because obviously pandemic came and she came home like literally 2 weeks before the world shut down. So if not, she would have been stuck in a nursing home. I wouldn't have been able to see her. Um, and kind of who knows what would have happened since then. So at least I got my month of her being in the house. It sucked to go home. Well, sucked to go to work. Do I need to do at work and come home to care for her, care for my dad? Um, so I'm now like a bedbound parent plus another elderly parent. Um, and with COVID happening and it was just a lot going on. So by the time I already like moved down here and worked at the first um, school district I worked at and being kind of screwed out of that job just added to the trauma of, you know, everything that was already kind of going on. Like, moved to a new state in the midst of COVID, like land this job thinking, okay, I could do like 10 years here and build up, you know, a retirement plan with a state retirement plan and putting money into 401k, 403bs, IRA accounts through the job. And like, all right, I could do this and be here for a little bit. And then kind of having a supervisor who was not a social worker, making social work decisions that didn't make a whole lot of sense, and even going through HR and still be like, all right, you gotta interview for your spot, and the job is not going to be given to you. You gotta like earn it after already putting in the work and learning on the job and not having supervision in the work. So that leading into the new job with another school district, and it was this constant turnover of work. I'm glad I'm at a point in my career that you know all this work experience, speak fluid Spanish, relate to people well, talk to people, do the work, whatever needs to be done. Kind of um, pretty quick learner, depending on what it is, and just talking to people and doing notes and all the stuff that relates to social work, and being able to work with different populations in the field for so long, and being able to land a job pretty quickly with the grace of God. So gotta give God first before anything else. Um, and kind of like a new job with a new environment, working in a school for the first time ever, and kind of like a perfect storm, like not knowing what to expect. Kids coming back into the school building for pretty much full time for the first time since COVID happened. And these kindergarten, I brought it up in past episodes of the podcast, these kindergarteners were off the chain, like the audacity of the coming in and not when they're not getting their way, they're punching, they're kicking, they're throwing chairs, throwing tables, they're spitting. Uh, the spitting I really took personally. Um, and again, these are 5, 6 year olds. It's like at the end of the day, they're kids and not knowing how to emotionally regulate their behavior, and maybe not having that guidance at home. And it's like kind of like that perfect storm, and I'm just there to take that bullet at the same time. Like I'm like risking my own health, like chasing kids in the hallway because they like running out of the classroom, and administration not knowing what to do, teachers not knowing what to do. They're looking for me for answers because I got LMSW after my name. They think I got all the answers, and like, you don't even know, like I don't have experience in the schools, so y'all need to work with me uh, on that and give me feedback. And it's just a perfect storm of having supervisors that not really very supportive as to what to do. Um, and they wanted me like to like learn stuff like during the day, and just never really materialize. So all that being said, the burnout was definitely real. Um, which leads to the compassion fatigue. Is like I seeing the same kids doing the same behaviors like every day. Get to a point where like I'm not dealing with this today. Like somebody else, like you go deal with this. Like I can't today. Um, having like kids see a piece of paper, like I got my notebook right here on the table, and seeing a piece of paper to do work, and they like throwing chairs, throwing the tantrum because they don't want to do the work, or they might find the work too hard. But it's like it was just a lot going on, and then still at the end of the day to come home and having to care for an elderly parent, and it was just a lot to go on. Um, dealing with the vicarious trauma of like listening to other kids, and getting to know them and their story, and listening to what they're going through, and you kind of like you feel bad for them at the end of the day, and then you go to another school or you hear from coworkers and like from other schools, and it's kind of like a systemic issue that needs to be addressed, and is not necessarily being addressed, and it's kind of hard to pinpoint where it comes from, where the starting point is to really kind of address those issues. So um, the burnout, uh, obviously talking about the grief of working in the school, kind of like in a way thinking back, kind of like helped me like to finally okay, like you need to grieve. Like this is your mom who like gave birth to you and almost like died giving birth to you. Like you finally the anniversary of like the 2 year anniversary of her passing took the day off from work and to the um, cemetery and like literally like just bawled, like, cried. Finally, those tears that for 2 years, like holding back those tears, and even when I like buried her ashes, like Thanksgiving of 2021, it was like nothing. It was just something that needed to be done. Like it's like no emotion. It's like a business tracks that a business transaction that sad as that sounds. That was the truth. It was finally a goal of mine to like finally bury her ashes and do that by myself. And the person just digging the hole and putting ashes in, and that was it. And to finally like having all that release, um, just be like, no, I miss you, and I miss her every day. Good thing she wasn't a fan of Christmas, so otherwise I'd be a nervous wreck. I'd be a wreck right now, and without having PTO days to take at work, so I would have been like sucking it up and going to work. While if she would have been like a fan of Christmas, so um, I mean, I like the PTSD of working in a school. Like I retired. Like something will have to be like dramatic, like to happen uh, in terms of finances and stuff for me to even like consider working in a school again. Um, and I know it probably sound like I'm like all over the place, but uh, just it just let me rock ya. Uh, uh, it's just in these last couple of years since COVID, even right before COVID, like just having to like the loss of Kobe, me being a Laker fan definitely hit hard. And then me being Puerto Rican, having to deal with Puerto Rico having earthquakes right after January 2020. That this is before the shutdown. So that was going on. And then the shutdown happens. Me dealing back and forth, setting. It's funny because working with the elderly, I'm setting up discharge plans and for people going, clients going back home from the hospital or from nursing homes back home. And in my personal life, I'm doing the same thing for my mom. And so it was like my outlet was going to the gym. Um, uh, as some of you know, I'm also a Zumba instructor on the side. So going to Zumba classes at the gym, sometimes doing my exercise classes at the gym I was working at in the Bronx before the shutdown happened, and being furloughed from that job in 2020. Um, so another job loss, but it was I liked making that side money. Was basically just use that for lunch money for the week. So um, and being able to save the money I was making through my 9 to 5 without using some of that as lunch money. So, um, and being able to use the group dynamics that we learned in social work school and kind of put into practice during the exercise class and doing exercise classes for kids. It wasn't even adults. So occasionally I was subbing and do Zumba for adults, but definitely like learning the different dynamics of running a group and fitness group and doing different fitness activities with kids was definitely uh, fun to do. And then hopefully 2023 kind of like get back into doing that um, as well. But between all that, so the gym was my outlet, and when COVID happened, not having that gym, that's why the poetry book came in handy, and the poetry just came out of the just out of nowhere, really. I just had these words in my head. It made sense. It rhymed. Just put it down, piece of paper. Middle of the night, sleeping, waking up, uh, pen and pad in my hand, writing words down, um, or even like writing in the dark and just trying to in the morning figure out what the heck I wrote. Um, Making up poems as I was going. Um, and as time went on, I wrote a poem here and there, and 2022 released the book. So, if you follow my business page, Back to the Entertainment LLC, I talk a lot about, and even in my book, the Latinx and Social Work book, um, my quote in the book is called "Embrace Your Reset," and I didn't have my hat on me, but that's other things I sell too. Embrace Your Reset T-shirts and hats. Basically, this year, finally releasing all the grief and all the struggles that I went through these last couple of years, all these changes of moving to a new state, you know, finally bringing my dad home from New York, living with me, losing my mom, being furloughed from my gym job, changing jobs like pretty much every year uh, since COVID happened. Um, not necessarily by choice. Um, and still podcasting and making time to learn how to build a business and still learning because I did things ass backwards. Um, learning about how to get business funding, learning, you know, to purchase a house, bought a house, like, and celebrating those wins and then having that self awareness to celebrate those wins. Having two books in a matter of months is wins. Being married, I got married this summer is a win. Finally went out of the country to Jamaica is a win. Podcasting weekly, even though there's like it became taxing a little bit, but you guys been rocking with me for all this time and looking to continue to build in 2023 is a win. Um, you know, Meeting fellow social workers for the first time that I've interviewed on a podcast or followed on IG, and finally meeting them for the first time in person this year is a win. Um, so it helps kind of overcome all this burnout, all this compassion fatigue, like uh, everything that's kind of transpired this last year with with the job and with the grief and loss, and the book, the Latinx and Social Work book, finally releasing all this stuff I had about my ex-wife and people not knowing my story. That there's a lot of people who don't know what I wrote, so or knew about my ex-wife passing away, but what led up to her passing, and then me still being a parent of kids who don't no longer have their mom. My ex-wife, she loved Christmas, so but kids, they smile every day. They still do their thing with with school and um, into video games. My son into sports. Um, Still living it as normally as possible, and like we don't dwell on like they don't dwell on their loss of their mom, but we talk about her whatever we can, and they ask questions, and we as a family like just deal with everything that comes that families do. So um yeah, so it's definitely a lot a lot of change, a lot of growth, and uh, I teach talk to them all the time just because don't use your mom's passing an excuse not to do well because life has a funny way to tell you you got to keep pushing along. It's you get your rest or when you can, and you got to keep pushing and trucking along. Like my dad told me subconsciously has taught me how to basically like keep pushing when things are down. Just keep pushing and trucking along. So that's what I've been doing. And podcasting and releasing books and already having thoughts of writing a new book. Um, I already have the idea of dedicating it to um, social work students and also social workers, new social workers up to 5 years of experience. So, what the meat and potatoes of the book is going to be about, I haven't gotten that far yet, but at least the idea is out there, and let's see what happens. Definitely looking into speaking engagements next year for 2023. Put that out there on LinkedIn, put it out, and manifest itself. Let God work his magic. And thank you to all, glory to God for getting me to this point. Um, Survived school years, survived the BS that I've gone through so far. Employment here in Delaware hasn't been smooth, at least the work part. Home life, still Delaware is still getting something to get used to. Especially living in the Bronx, living in New York, where stuff is always happening. Is get food at any time of day or night. Uh, there's always something to do. Um, it's just New York, for lack of better words. So, and having that grief of like I'm not in New York anymore, and most of the people that I know that I talk to live in New York. My new peers that I met, a lot of them are in New York. So it's like where opportunities present themselves, I may not be available to participate in that because it takes me 3 hours driving just to get to New York. And I'm not going to be available, especially if I have no PTO time to take to be going back and forth or just for a day trip or something like that, unless it's a Saturday or Sunday. So there's always events going on and be like, damn, like I want to go to that. If I was in New York, I would go to that. Uh, it's always there's always stuff, but so there's like the loss, the grief and the loss of that, and um, it's time to make opportunities down here in Delaware. So there's a lot of stuff that's missing. There's not a lot of resources related to social work, and I kind of brought that up in past episodes this season on the podcast as well. Um, that you could go back and take a listen of stuff that's happening in Delaware. Even having the NASW president of Delaware, the Delaware chapter, on the podcast, and kind of look forward to continue to have those conversations, with her and meet other social workers in this state, kind of see where things are at, what's missing, and even start developing relationships with different chambers of commerce throughout the state. Um, so that's kind of like the game plan where I'm at. The I'm at a good place in terms of where I'm at working. It's only been like 4 months. It's definitely a place where I could see myself being at for a while. I'm tired of job hopping, and let's see where it goes. And this, whatever God leads me to, that's where I'm gonna go and follow this plan, follow this lead, and still, but also at the same time, continue to create my own opportunities. So whether it be a new book, continue the podcast, do my own webinars, and continue making attempts because this was supposed to be a live Zoom class, a Zoom podcast episode, and nobody bought tickets. So it is what it is. But take those. Still gonna put it out there and continue to try. Like try, you fail, you keep pushing and keep going at it. So um, and reach people who I never met before, and continue to try to reach people. Continue like post content, post memes related to social work, uh, and continue to advocate for us Latinos, Latinx, Hispanic, um, continue to advocate for Black African Americans, um, for Haitians, just for equal opportunity for every one of us, and continue to call out people for not doing what they need to be doing, uh, or messing up, messing things up for like the rest of us, or calling people out on their bullshit. And would that be friends that you know for a long time? Would it be family? Um, doesn't matter. So um, you know, continue the good fight, continue to keep on pushing on, continue to do my thing best I can, the best of my ability, and hopefully I continue to rock out, support. Um, so I'll continue to be consistent with dropping these episodes, continue to provide um, important conversations that other people, other podcasters are not talking about, or get my own different perspective on if somebody else is talking about something, and get my own 2 cents. I'm not going to talk about things that I don't know a lot about or might not have the whole information because I don't want to seem like uninformed. Um, I don't want to seem like I know what the heck I'm talking about if I really don't and don't want to make. Um, well, it's all right. We're human. We make mistakes, but at the same time, like I want to give y'all dope conversation, dope uh, info, stuff for you to learn that you could put into practice yourself, or have conversations with other peers and even peers who are not in the social work profession, like hey, like have you like heard about this or know about this? Or, um, I'll continue to talk about entrepreneurship because we need to make a living, like a real living wage, and um, basically, depending what you do in social work, it may not be a total livable wage or what you want to do, what you want to accomplish in your own lives. So working in nonprofit agencies may not may not lead you to where you want to be in terms of your finances. So, continue to talk about entrepreneurship and ways to, you know, use our transferable skills that we have in social work. And I'm still learning. I'm still trying to put things in practice myself, and put into practice to make these extra money, and then you need to make multiple streams of income, somehow, some way. So, um, definitely, for those who experiencing the burnout, compassion fatigue, you know, going through vicarious traumas, PTSD related to work, why I created the, the, the FASWB shirts, because of me failing the exam 5 times. So that leads to trauma of failing the exams or at different points. Even I wrote in this book, in the Language and Social Work book, failing the exam, and then a few weeks later, in 2014, finding out I'm being laid off because the clinic that I worked at closed. So I could have had my L and be good. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna lose my job, but with an L, I could pick up a job and probably make even more money that I was making at the time instead of me failing the exam. At that time was like the third time and losing the job. So like, back to back traumatic events, going going through that stuff. So the trauma has been happening way before COVID. Uh, it's just right now I'm at a place where, you know, just embracing me, like having better self confidence, better self esteem, that I didn't have back then. And all right, it's just life. Just keep on pushing. Got kids to take care of, wife to take care of, dad to take care of, you know, new job, new opportunities. Um, I was on TV. I was on the news. I'll put the link back up. Thanksgiving was on the news, talking about my poetry book. So the wins have been happening this year. Um, Basically, the major loss of this year was the loss of my favorite aunt in Puerto Rico. She died in April this year, so that was tough because she sounded exactly like my mom. So that was tough. Um, So yeah, but besides that, 2022 was a good a good year, and 2023 we move onward, and hopefully 2023 will be the year a lot of us see a cut in our of the amount of student loans that we owe, and the government will come through with some student loan forgiveness. Hopefully, we can only hope and pray. So let's stay positive. Strength perspective always. Definitely continue to talk about mental health and um, unfortunately, I had another celebrity death this week, and unfortunately, it seemed like people want to talk about mental health and suicides when a celebrity passes, when things are happening every day, and people are struggling out there. People still dealing with, um, the impact of COVID and not working or only working part time, and government assistance from COVID relief is being cut off, and now people are now going to be facing foreclosures, or they haven't already. There will be um, any Medicaid dollars that were being used to continue on Medicaid to 2022. So that's going to be cut off for 2023. So we're going to see a lot more people struggling, and we need to continue to talk about mental health and and advocate for real affordable housing for people um, for all walks of life. Continue to advocate for LGBTQ plus community, um, African Americans, continue to go through traumatic events on a daily basis, and it's you know, there's always the gun issues, those mass shootings, unfortunately, still happening. So, COVID's still ramping, and you got RSV going on. There's Mpox going on. So, um, be careful, stay safe. Let's continue conversation of mental health, no matter where you are, no matter what language you speak, primarily, um, no matter the backgrounds, no matter your gender, what you identify. Continue to have these conversations, continue to grow together, love together, and yeah, just be there for each other. We burned out. Um, figure it out. Maybe you just need a therapist. Um, you need to leave that new job, find a new job. There's jobs out there in social work. You just got to find them. Use LinkedIn. Um, to build a network of people like, hey, I'm hiring. Social work on Twitter. Social work hashtag social work Twitter is amazing. Use that. Follow people on you on Instagram. Like there's ways to look for work, find work in the field. If the agency or wherever you at is not working and you need to get out there, definitely get out. Um, Definitely a proud job hopper. And like I said before, these last instances of jobs, well, at least the first one in Delaware or the second one in Delaware, didn't want to leave working in the school system, but didn't want to leave. But I'm at a good place now. So um, I hope this episode made sense. I know I was like kind of all over the place. Other than writing the definitions of these words, kind of like all over the place, but kind of see let y'all know, be real um, in terms of conversation with you guys. Um, Thanks again for all the love and support, and we'll be talking soon in God's will, wherever you at. Peace, y'all.